So, I have called today's Facebook Live, Does Sex Make a Difference? I'll read out the question, and then what I'll do, I've taken lots and lots of notes, as you can see. What I will do is I will answer the question, and then eventually in May, this one will go up on the blog. So, okay. I have enjoyed watching your Facebook Lives, Elizabeth. I have a problem. I am a virgin and have been with my boyfriend for 9 years. Throughout the years, the spark has slowly vanished. The sweet things he used to do for me, he doesn't do anymore because of how long we've been together. We haven't had sex, but we do foreplay, and he doesn't seem to satisfy me anymore because of his principles. I met a guy in the office, and he provides me with everything my long-term boyfriend can't. He gives me time, attention, and although we haven't had sex yet, he satisfies me in a way my boyfriend cannot. This guy has a child with another woman, and he left her. I feel guilty because I might have something to do with it, but he says I don't. He knows I have a boyfriend, but he wants me to break up with my boyfriend and be with him. He has plans for our future, and he wants us to live together. I love my boyfriend and I don't want to leave him. But for some reason, I can't leave the other guy as well. He doesn't want me to let go of him because he's forcing me to choose him. I've tried breaking up with him before, but I also run back to him because he has something my boyfriend doesn't. We've been at this for a year and I don't know what to do. I want to let go of him, but I can't bring myself to. So, I've got lots to say about this one. So, all right, I'll get started. The first thing is there's 3 things that come forward for me that I need to talk about, and then there's a few things at the end of this post, of this question that I'm going to talk about that sort of come to my mind that I think are important to address. So the first thing is that you feel like your relationship's lost its spark, the primary relationship that you've been in for 9 years. There's this issue of your sexual relationship, and then there's this temptation of this new guy that you've only known for 12 months. Okay, so look, there's a part of this that is totally normal. When you've been in a relationship for 9 years, and 9 years is a relatively long period of time to be in a relationship, it is normal for the spark to go out of the relationship. That is absolutely normal. So the fact that you're saying that there's something happening here where the relationship's kind of got into that ho-hum kind of space is normal. However, there's a problem in the fact that the sexuality and the way that the sex is happening in your relationship is actually telling me a lot about what's going on for you. So you're doing this foreplay and you've been doing it for 9 years. Well, it's like your relationship's stuck and it's not progressing. That's what I'm seeing here. So you've got this situation where you're not having full intercourse, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but because the relationship is stuck in this beginning stage with the sexuality, it means that it's not progressing. And this is why you've kind of got yourself into a headspace where maybe you think that the relationship, or no, look, it probably has lost its spark, but I believe the reason it's lost its spark is part of the reason is not just the length of time, but the fact that it's not progressing. We all expect our relationships to progress. We expect them to go from that first crazy stage to move into that warm, hi Christy, how are you? Into that warm, cozy jumper stage of the relationship where you feel really comfortable. And then hopefully you don't progress into the I love you but I'm not in love with you stage. It can happen. And you know, relationships can come back from that and sometimes they don't. But it's important for you to recognise that there's something about the sexuality here that is really contributing to why you're feeling the way you are. Now, it is normal to want to have sex with someone and go all the way. That's normal. And it is actually, if sex progresses in a healthy way, where it's not just a physical release, that it actually is an expression of the emotional as well as the physical connection. It is an expression of commitment. It's a connection between you. And somehow that's not happening here. And so that would explain why you are attracted to someone else. And if you're still a virgin, you've still got that teenage, I want to know all about it kind of thing. And I'm sorry, but a whole lot of foreplay, no matter how creative it is not going to tell you all about it. So there's that natural instinct that you're curious. So of course this guy that you've met's going to, really tempt you and really, get your interest going. So you must keep that in mind when you're thinking about, hi Georgina, how are you? You must think about that when you're thinking about this temptation with this other guy. Now, I'm thinking about this interpretation of sex. Now, you haven't given me much about this, so I don't quite know whether this is a guy with a very strong moral code, whether he's highly religious, whether he just wants to, I don't know, protect himself from STDs. Whatever his principles are, he's got this thing in his head, no sex before marriage. But it's interesting the way he's interpreting sex, because as a couples therapist, oh, thanks, Georgina. As a couples therapist, I interpret sex as all kinds of sex. I always think of Bill Clinton and his, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. Well, I think he did. I think it came out he was lying. But, his interpretation of sex was intercourse. And I'm sorry, but intercourse is only part of sex. So what's happening here is, particularly if he's trying to adhere to some kind of religious moral code, is he's deluding himself into believing that because he's not having intercourse with you, that he is functioning in this should space. And when people function in a should space, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, basically what they're doing is they're not being true to themselves. They're doing what they think should be happening. And so this is a relationship where I feel like there's a lot of denial of feeling, and a lot of holding back of feeling, and a lot of measurement, and a lot of making sure that you're keeping up appearances, and you're doing what, hi Chris, how are you? You're doing what you think should be happening rather than what your heart. Hang on, just a minute, I'll just have a look. Oh, Aspasia, how are you, darling? Sorry if I hesitate, I'm in weird light and I was walking around the house looking for places to sit, and I've got this stubbornness in me that I want to sit outside. Anyway, I'll keep going. So, of course, sex is a really, it's a powerful urge. So here you are holding yourself back, you're in this really measured relationship, and you meet this guy, and sounds to me like, well, he's had a child, he's left his partner, so he's a bit of an action man. Hi, Chris. He's a bit of an action man, and so, of course, he basically, this is a guy that of course, you're going to be tempted by him. And the sex that you're having with the, your primary partner that you've been with for 9 years, it's like he's got a lolly jar and he's waved it under your nose and said, oh, smell this. Or, I'm thinking, what's going through my head? A Mars bar. And he's got this Mars bar and he's waving it under your nose and you're thinking, oh, I can smell it. And the worst part is unlike chocolate or lollies that you know what they taste like, you don't know what they taste like. So not only do they smell good, you've got all these promises out in the world that, oh, it's great, but you don't actually know what it tastes like, because you haven't had the full experience. So, of course, you're going to be so sexually frustrated, you poor girl. And eventually, all his tricks, especially if he's not making a real effort, you're going to find it really difficult to orgasm. So, of course, you've got all this pent-up frustration. It's got to go somewhere. All right. So, the other guy's offering you a full relationship. I've got notes here because it's huge. I've got a lot to say. The other guy's offering you a full relationship. He's had a child. He's had a relationship with someone else. And not only that, he's hanging in there, and you're saying he's pushing you to make a decision. And so, of course, someone offers you, it says, here's the lolly jar, here's the Mars bar, I'm going to take the wrapper off. Not only that, I'm going to let you take a bite, I'm going to share it with you, and, let's have fun. Well, of course, this is not just about being tempted because this guy offers you something different. This is about your own sexuality, and you need to really bear that in mind. Okay. Now, I'm interested to know, and there isn't anything in the question here, and this is where, when I get this platform worked out where you can come in and work with me, this is where I think it would be really great if we could create a safe space where you could come in and be here so that I could ask you questions as I go along and work on your question. So it's coming, just bear with me. But I'm interested to know about your primary partner, because what's happening here is an emotional affair. You've got a primary relationship with your partner of 9 years, and you describe him as your boyfriend, which I find interesting. As I said, there's something about the progression of this. You're not calling him your partner, you're calling him your boyfriend after 9 years. 9 years is a long time to be a boyfriend and girlfriend and not a partner. All right. But it's interesting that he is tolerating this. I don't know whether he knows that you've got this other friendship going, but essentially you're having an emotional affair. You're actually torn between two men, which of course is why you've written to me. But he's being really tolerant of this, which is really interesting. It's interesting that I talked about this should space that your boyfriend's in. So there's something about, I wonder about him, whether he's even able to have high tolerance of this sort of thing because he feels he should because he's made a commitment to you. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't know what's going on. But he's in a should space. And when a person's in a should space, then they're not in their truth. They're really not. He's doing what he's been told for his whole life. You know, this is old thinking. This thinking about no sex before marriage. Look, some people do make the decision, usually after they've had a series of broken relationships and they decide to use delaying sex to slow themselves down. Or they might say no sex before marriage. Think of Mariah Carey. But usually it's an old way of thinking. And so I'm really wondering about where that's coming from. And my sense of it is that it's a family thing or a religious thing. And if that's the case, often people that live in this is what I should do, clearly are unhappy. And it's interesting that he's chosen to do everything but to delude himself into thinking that he's following what he should do by not having intercourse with you, so therefore saying, I'm not having sex with you, when really he's just doing what he feels he should do in order to placate everybody around him. So I think part of you working out the answer to your problem that you've written to me about is asking him what he wants and saying to him, every time he says, oh, well, you know, we can't have sex before we get married, or we should wait for this, or we should do that, or the church says we should, or I'm not ready yet, so we can't. You need to slow him down and say, I know all that. I know all that. In your heart. Hi, Linda. In your heart. What do you want? What do you want? Because I don't know that this is working for me anymore. I'm tempted to be with somebody else. And, you know, if you didn't go and be with that guy you've met at work, I can guarantee to you, because of the state your relationship's in, if it wasn't him, it'd be somebody else. So you must be very clear on that. If it wasn't this guy that you've met at work that you feel so attracted to, it would definitely be somebody else. So you must keep that in mind. So if you're talking to your boyfriend that you've spent 9 years with, hi, Linda, you really, really must ask him. Try and get him to go deep inside. Don't talk about feelings. Men don't cope with them very well. And this guy, I get a sense he's very controlled. So say to him, what do you think? What do you want? And use the word think, and he'll feel a bit safer with that. But if he goes down this pathway of sprouting off all this stuff, particularly if he's quite fundamental, you know, you need to get in underneath that. And as a counsellor, the counsellor would be trying to get in underneath that. The reason I want you to do that is it's going to help you work out what you want. Because if he comes out with some kind of, you know, what's bothering me is he's managed to well, without being crude, tie a knot in it for 9 years. And what's worrying me is this is a guy who maybe thinks, and again, it's so hard to know this stuff because if you asked him outright, he'd probably deny it. But it bothers me that this is a guy that thinks that intercourse is for procreation or something. There's something going on with his sexuality, and you really need to get to the bottom of it, because if you make a commitment to this guy, if you have children with him, it can be very hard to leave. So you really, I'm a great advocate of trying to work it out right at the beginning of the relationship rather than as the relationship progresses. So, you need to really, in order to work out what you want, I think listening to his interpretation would be very helpful to you, because you'll certainly know very quickly as he starts to speak to you whether he's talking to you about a future that you want. The other thing you need to do is it would be really helpful for you to think about how you're compromising yourself. So I want you to think about how you're compromising yourself in the fact that you are, well, clearly you don't have this no sex before marriage thing happening, I don't think, because you're quite willing to go off with this guy you've met at work and have sex with him if the ducks lined up, kind of thing. Like, you're in a space now, I think you're thinking to yourself, you know what, I think I'd like to have sex, and I don't blame you. I think 9 years is a long time to have self-control. It really is. So you need to ask yourself, how am I compromising myself? Looking at your current situation. So how am I compromising myself with my current partner, where we're doing all this foreplay and we've done it for 9 years? How am I compromising myself that, do I want a commitment with this man? Or is this me also holding off this commitment? Is it him or is it me? If I was in a commitment with him, what would I want it to look like? Really, really important. So that is a really good space for you to go into as well, and make a list. Now, I have got, and I'm going to talk to you about this at the end of this session, coming up in the next couple of weeks, I've got a really good tool coming that's going to be free to all my girls in the group, and it's going to be a relationship journal to help you work out what you want in a relationship. And I'm so excited about it. I wrote it, I started it on Friday and it's almost finished. The idea came to me and it started pouring out on paper, and the more I wrote, the clearer it got that this would be a really good thing for us to be doing. So that's something that's coming up that's going to help you in the next couple of weeks. I want you to think about whether it would be helpful for you. Also, I want you to be really careful as you're thinking about what you want, that you don't think to yourself, oh, well, this new guy is what I want. Because honestly, you're falling in love with him in a really difficult situation with your current relationship. And although some people say, falling in love in the arms of someone else makes the loss of, the first relationship easier, it's not a healthy way to start a relationship. And you've got all these natural urges going on. So I want you to be really careful that you don't go from the frying pan into the fire with this guy. And that you don't leave the current boyfriend because you decide, yes, actually, I have compromised too much. This is not what I want. And you go to the other guy and then find that he's charming at work. He's charming while you're having an emotional affair with him. But when you get down to the nitty-gritty of being in a relationship with him, he's not very nice. So you really need to pace yourself. It's very, very important that you do that. And you get to know him and not just, and I know you probably feel like you know him because you've known him for 12 months, but really get to know him. I think that's really important. So slow yourself down. Think about how you've been compromising yourself. Think about what you really want. Have that conversation with your boyfriend, because you've got this relationship with him for 9 years and you're saying to me, I don't know that I really want to break up with him. But I'm telling you now, if the relationship keeps going the way it is, it's going to have to progress, or if you were to leave this job you're in now and say goodbye to the other guy, it won't be long, someone else will come along, because you're not, the issues in the first relationship have got to be sorted. They really do. Whatever that looks like. And it might be that you're quite happy to get married in order to have sex with him. I mean, it might be that you've got exactly the same ideas as him, and that you would be overjoyed if he wanted to get married, but for some reason you're stuck. I don't know. But what I am saying to you is, you need to be careful. So it may be helpful for you to see a counsellor. At the moment, my books are closed because I'm just so busy setting up everything online. And I'm not sure whether I'm going to do work totally online or whether I'm going to be seeing clients. But depending on where you are, I might be able to make a recommendation for you for a relationships therapist. The other thing would be a support group, and that is something that's on my list that I'm looking at doing, and it might be online or it might be, I'm still thinking about how the online space is going to work for all of us. So that's something that, please stay tuned for that. But if you have a look on Meetup, there are support groups there that you can join where you might be able to go and even just being able to air how you're feeling can be very helpful to you. The last thing I want to say to you is, and this came to me right at the end after I'd kind of been contemplating your question that you'd sent to me. And this is something that's really important that I want you to ask yourself. And that is, your boyfriend, he's a very strong-willed person, I get the sense. He's really in the should space. Yeah, strong. You've described him as strong principles, yeah? So he really manages the relationship. He's got these strong principles and he says no sex before marriage, and he's called all these boundaries around how you'll be physical together, very controlled, contained, yeah? Then you've got this new guy, and the comment that was made was, at the end of your question was, he is forcing me to choose him. There's something about this guy. He's pursuing you. Like, that's the sense I get from this question. He's pursuing you. And so, I wonder about whether he's also very strong-willed, very one-minded. And you need to think about what that's about. Why? Because essentially, you're caught between two men who are both very strong-willed. They both love you, which of course, anybody loves that, to have two men that love them. That'd be pretty cool. So be very careful you're not getting caught up in that too. But two guys who are very strong in their ideas about relationships, how relationships should progress, who they want and how they want them. Where does your say come in all of this? You've got the boyfriend, the 9-year boyfriend that's saying no sex before marriage, and you're kind of, in that and behaving and doing what, he said, he wants, despite how you feel. And then you've got this other guy that keeps sort of reeling you back in, and I imagine there's probably a pattern going on with that. And there is a blog post on my blog, on my website, called "Is Your Relationship in a Familiar Pattern?" And I will try and remember to put that in the comments. But there's something going on with a pattern here between you where maybe you're cutting off from him and he's dragging you back in. So he really is pursuing you. And if that's the case, and there's something a bit toxic about this because you're still in another relationship, you need to really think about what all that's about. And that's kind of sits in the how am I compromising myself? And this is about your partner choice. This is about who you choose. So I think I've come to the end of everything I wanted to talk to you about. I hope that's been helpful to you. And of course, remember, the Facebook Live will go up in the group, so you'll be able to go back and watch everything from the